Kory Schweiss joining us on Knuckleball Prime Time, a football coach for the Central Rebels. Kory would probably rather talk about deer hunting, but I don't know anything about it. So you'd have to teach me for me to ask an intelligent question.
Yeah, we'll probably stick with football for this.
All right. Did you get a buck yet?
No, I shot a doe on Saturday, but haven't shot a buck yet, and kind of waiting on that.
All right. Okay. Good enough. We'll talk football then, I guess.
Right.
So you guys come up with another winning season, 6-5 this year. Won some big games, won some really exciting games. I know that you come off a state championship, and everybody gets revved up about that. And I don't know whether fans consider that, a letdown on a season like that. But to me, another winning season, you lose so much, not only talent, but experience off of a team. And you guys got in so many big spots this year and tight games, and you won late and made so many plays, to win games like that. I would think there has to be satisfaction in something like that anyway.
Yeah. It was obviously a different type of season than some of the ones we've had in the past. But, every one of our games, other than really the Valley Catholic game, even the St. Dominic game was pretty close at halftime. The Dexter game was pretty close in the, even in the third quarter. Our games were really close. Like, to be a fan, it was probably a little bit more entertaining to be at our games this year because, there was a lot of pretty much every game was still winnable in the fourth quarter and losable in the fourth quarter, other than the one and
or beyond.
Yeah, or beyond. Yeah, I think we played more overtimes this year than I had played in my previous 24 years. So that's kind of crazy, but. The good thing is in a lot of those games, we won those close games. I know the 2 overtime games in our conference against Fredericktown and St. Gen, and then the game against Potosi with like 13 seconds left or whatever it was. You take away those 3, we end up with 3 wins, and then we probably don't get the same seed we would have gotten in districts, obviously. So we may not even get to play Kennett, so we may end up with 2 wins. We were anywhere from the 2 win to if we win the Farmington and St. Gen games that we had leads at halftime, fourth quarter. We were anywhere from 2 to 8 wins. We could have potentially ended up with 2. We could have ended up with 8. So to get 6 was kind of it was okay. It wasn't the best we could have done, but obviously we could have done a little worse too.
So did it feel like it might be that kind of season when you look at what you had, the style that you probably were going to have to play, and the competition? Did it feel like there were going to be some grinders this year like that?
Going into the season, if you'd have told me we'd won 6 games, I probably would have taken it, just because knowing what we had coming in and knowing what our schedule was, you couldn't look at our schedule and pick 6 that you were going to win for sure. The Valley game was one of those that you probably figured you probably weren't going to win. St. Dominic was one of those games that you probably figured you weren't going to win. And then we ended the season with Farmington and Dexter, and we figured Farmington would be a lot better this year, and we knew Dexter was going to be pretty good. If we lose those 4 games, we'd have to win the rest of them to get to 5, going into the districts, which is what we ended up doing. And that was knowing, and we played Potosi all summer, and we kind of knew that Potosi was probably a little bit more talented than we were.
And you caught them without their best running back. That wasn't bad.
Yeah, and that was luck on our part, obviously. St. Gen, we played them in the Jamboree, so we kind of knew that we were kind of similar type teams. Our schedule was, there wasn't really anybody on our schedule that I thought, not like in the past where you thought we're definitely going to win this game.
Yeah.
And there was just, like I said, there was a couple that you thought, well, we probably won't win. If we could have come out of there with 7 wins, it would have been probably the best case scenario. So to end up with 6 was not too bad.
We talked on Knuckleball Prime Time a few times on the Parkland podcast that it seemed like the bottom, whatever the bottom is of like some of the teams that you play was better this year. It seemed like maybe some of the teams that you usually can go, yeah, well, that's a win. Those teams kind of got better this year. It felt like.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell because we had come down to the pack so much, so it's kind of hard to tell. But I do think obviously that Fredericktown was better. Potosi was better. I thought Potosi, if they could have kept their guy healthy, Walton, they probably would have had a heck of a lot better season than they did, and I hate that for them because he's really. He's really. I know people didn't get to see it, but he's really good. So, and in high school, man, you have an electric player like that. It makes a big difference, especially when everything's so competitive anyway. But yeah, those two teams were for sure better, especially if Walton was healthy. And St. Gen and us were kind of just, we were just kind of average. There's definitely been a lot of years where we've been better than we've been this year. So it just kind of evened everything out, except for Valley, obviously at the top.
I know every team kind of has its own personality. What was this year's personality?
I don't know about a personality, but the biggest thing for me, probably the biggest disappointment I'd say in this team was I just didn't feel like we got a whole lot better. From week 1 to week what did we play? Week 11. I just thought that. In 25 years, I feel like we've done a pretty good job at Central of being a lot better at the end of the season than we were at the beginning, and I just didn't feel like we made that kind of improvement this year, and that was kind of disappointing. That's on us as coaches. Whatever we were doing wasn't we weren't getting it to our kids, and that was disappointing. I don't know how you would define that, but. That's the takeaway that I had from the season is I just didn't feel like we got a whole lot better. I did feel like we had some good practice toward the end. But then, the 2 of our last games were against Farmington and St. Gen. We played really well in the first half of both of those games. And then the second half, we come out like a totally different team. And we usually pride ourselves on being able to play better in the second half than we do the first half. And for whatever reason, those 2 games, we just really struggled in the second half. A lot of it, penalties. A lot of it, honestly, Chad, was because we've been so good and so talented in the past. Like, we could make mistakes and you didn't really notice.
Right. Your margins were thinner.
Yeah, because we could overcome a lot of mistakes because we had so many playmakers. But, we knew going into this season if we had to play pretty clean football to be successful. And if we make mistakes, a holding call and you need to get 20 yards, we probably aren't going to do it, and if we have to get 10 with Jackson back there, you feel pretty good about it, But and the other thing is, you can't run Jackson every play, and I felt like if when we needed to or in the first half, we'd run Jackson quite a bit, and then you're thinking, okay, we can't continue to do this. Now we did it in a few games,
yeah.
And we were able to win those games, but. Even looking at the St. Gen game and the Farmington game, I could have ran Jackson 10, 15 more times, and he probably would have been able to withstand it. But at the same time, man, you got to think about the kid a little bit too. And I think Jackson was really wanting the ball, but the other guys were making plays at times too. So, but again, it came down to making too many penalties, and those penalties killing us.
You lost so much talent, though, from the year before, and experience, like we said. And one thing that you had this year is you had some younger guys in spots at the varsity level, maybe for the first time. And that might, there are always growing pains with that. But, take a look at a list of guys that are going to come back for you next year. It's nice to have gotten them experience this year.
Yeah.
You look at it. Karis Foster, August Black, Gabe Toomey, all, skill guys that certainly are athletic. Nick Fowler, Silas Richardson, Threlkeld along the line, Keegan Sherrill, Dakota Bowers, Max Woods, Jackson Kelly, Brady Schweiss, Chad Cosby. Like, those are all guys that are going to come back that got a lot of good experience this year, I would think.
Yeah, we got a lot of guys coming back, that's for sure. It's going to hurt losing Jackson. Obviously, he's an all-state caliber kid, But the thing is, all those guys coming back, you still got to have – you still like to have those playmakers. Like, we've played young guys in the past. Like, we played Joe Bryant, Kason Murphy, Deshaun Welch. We played those guys because they were good enough to play varsity football. We were playing a lot of young guys this year just out of necessity. It wasn't really that they were ready yet. They were probably some JV caliber guys other years for us, but for this year they had to play varsity, and all those guys you mentioned weren't like that, but some of them were. But the good thing is they did get a lot of good varsity experience, and I do think that's going to pay dividends next year. I think there's potential to be pretty good. I know Brody Pig come in when Jackson got hurt in the Kennett game and didn't play any after the second quarter. He come in and played quarterback for the last 3 quarters of that game and actually looked pretty good and showed some pretty nice things during JV games. And so that will be a project for us, obviously, trying to fill in that quarterback position. He and Braden Patterson both played some quarterback at the JV level, and obviously that's a position that in the last in the last 11 years now, we've had all-state caliber quarterbacks 9 out of the 11 years, and that usually tends to have some pretty winning football teams. And it's not easy to be an all-state quarterback because there's only one guy that gets all-state quarterback. Well, there's 3 because you got a first, second, and third team, but it's not easy to get that. And, starting with Jake Bridges and Jace Bland and Jet Bridges and Cason Murphy and Jackson this year, we've had some pretty good ones, and it's going to be hard to fill the shoes of those guys, and hopefully we'll find somebody that can come close.
Wow. Now that you say it, yeah, I go, sure, but to say it out loud like that, 9 out of 11 years, that's amazing.
Yeah, and you look back at those years, and they not only were those guys so good and so talented, but they were so smart. Like they're literally a coach on the field. Like it's just so much easier to coach when you got somebody that that's playing that position that understands what you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those guys, and I was talking to our quarterbacks that are coming back next year, because one's going to be a senior, one's going to be a sophomore, and I was telling them that if you look back since I've been the coach, like I really don't like playing senior quarterbacks like I did this year with Jackson. I did that because I thought he gave us
a 1 year quarterback.
Yeah, 1 year
basically. Yeah.
1 year quarterback. I just think that the quarterbacks, everybody learns from experience, but I think quarterbacks, their second year, they're so much better than they are their first year, just because the game slows down, and once the game slows down for you as a quarterback, it's way easier to play that position. Coach Calvert always uses this analogy in baseball, and he says slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And I feel that way at the quarterback position. It's really like that because everything's going faster than what it really is in reality in your head. And I think that second year, everything really just slows down, and you're basically now you're out there just playing catch, and you're just kind of doing it like practice almost. Jake played 2 years. Actually, before him, Hunter Curtoys played 3 years, 2.5. And then Jake played 2, and then Jace played 2, and then Dylan Corcoran played 2, and then Jet played 2, and then Cason played 2.
Right.
So, Jackson just played the 1, and now Braden Patterson's going to be a senior, and Brody Pigg's going to be a sophomore. And we really don't have anybody else that's really played a whole lot of quarterback reps. So, I'm probably leaning toward Brody Pigg just because that'll give him more years, to get some experience back there. But I talked to Braden, and that doesn't mean that he won't be. I mean, it's obviously going to be an open competition. Braden Patterson definitely throws the ball better right now than Brody does. Brody definitely runs it better and has probably a little bit more potential to give us a little bit more dynamics, I guess, next year. But again, you're only one play away anyway, even if you're not the guy. So, especially if you're a running quarterback, which Brody will be somewhat more of a running quarterback. So we got to have 2 guys ready to go for sure.
Not a coincidence over that span, and if you extend it out to 12 years, Central has averaged 10 wins. You've averaged basically a perfect regular season if you factor in all the. I mean, that's a pretty amazing run.
Yeah, and we've kind of known that we've kind of been averaging 10 wins, and that's why when you get 6, even though it's a winning season, it doesn't seem like you had a real good season when you're averaging 10. But I'll tell you, when we got there in 2000, if you had told people that we would be averaging 10 wins a season, I think they'd all said you're lying. I mean, because in the decade of the 90s, we didn't. I think they only won like 4 games the whole decade or something.
Well, 3-7 and 1-9.
Yeah,
your first 2 years, right? Yep. And then, like, what do you build? Like, what do you start with? What do you accomplish in those first 2 years to kind of set the foundation then?
Well, it was so hard. I remember we had a little success. I was there for 4 years as an assistant, and we had a little success those years. My first year there, we were 4-6, which was actually really good compared to what they had been. And then we went 9-1, and actually should have won. We should have beat St. John that year. We were actually winning 12-0 at halftime and ended up losing 22-12. And then we went 8-2, and then I think the next year we were 5-5. And then so when I took over, I really wanted the off season. I wanted everything to be like it was at Valley, and because that's where I came from, that's what I knew, and I knew it was successful. And what I found out is you can't just go from what it was to that, because the kids fight
It's a
that.
shock.
Yeah, it's a shock, because that's like, I wanted them to do so much more than they were used to doing, and they fought it bad. And I remember after 5 games, my first year coaching, I went home and told my wife, I said, I'm done. Like, I am not doing this anymore. Like, I ended up having a meeting with all the seniors before our week 6 game. We were 0-5, I think. With all of our seniors, we were getting ready to play Herculaneum, who was, I think, ranked 2nd in the state at the time. And I met with them all, and we had good talks. And basically, I told them, like, you have 5 games left. Doesn't really matter. You guys can hate me all you want. Yeah, like, it is what it is. But we ended up winning 3 of our last 5 that year, and ended up 3-7. And then, the next year, I think a lot of the kids were like, okay, like, we tried to do this last summer. Like, I'm not even coming out. Like, I had 3 seniors that year. My second year, we had 3 seniors.
On the whole team?
On the whole team, wow. We had 3 seniors. The good thing was Coach Calvert at that time, my first year was a sophomore, so this time he was a junior. The year we went 1-9, he was a junior, and he was playing quarterback for me, and he was a really good player, but we really didn't have much on the offensive line, and he was kind of running around like a chicken with his head cut off back there, and we had a pretty decent group behind him. Aaron Bates and those guys were kind of coming up, and Tony Martin was behind him. So we had some kids that were coming up that actually bought into what I was wanting to do. And then obviously we hired PJ, around that same time. I guess after my 3rd year, we went 5-5, I guess, that 3rd year. Mm. And then we hired PJ, and then we went 7-3. And then I think we ended up 4-6. And then ever since then, we've been winning. We've had winning seasons, or at least a 500 season since then. So, but it was really I'd say Coach Calvert's group ended 5-5, but his group was probably the group that, at least with him leading the way, was, because you got to have players. You can't, as a coach, you can't just have these expectations and the kids aren't just going to buy in. You got to have some leaders on your team that get the other guys to buy in and say, hey, let's do what Coach is talking about or whatever. And Coach Calvert's group was actually the group that did that. I know on the schedule, they only ended up 5-5, but those 2 years after that first year, at least they got the team, the guys to buy in, and then those younger guys coming up. And, there's stories about some of them that were, some of the players would go try to get them for workouts, and they'd be hiding in the closet. I mean, that's the kind of stuff we were fighting back then. Wow. I don't think that stuff happens anymore. At least I hope not. But we have high expectations, and I think the higher the expectation, you can exceed other people's expectations. As long as you and your players have high expectations, then the sky's the limit.
Yeah. Let me ask you about some area teams that are still going.
Okay.
Because not only did you come from a state championship caliber program playing at Valley, you have seen other teams win state. You won it last year. You know what it takes. So we've got 3 teams kind of around the area, maybe a little bit extended. You've either played them or you've played teams that have played them. So I'm guessing you've at least caught film on all of them. Right. First one got to be Valley, right? Your alma mater. You know what qualities you've seen in them when they won state before. Do they have some of those qualities this year?
Valley's going to win state.
Yep. Okay.
I think their road is easier this year than it's been. I don't think Lamar's as good. Valley's not as good as they've been. Valley's
they're at the Class 2 level this year.
They're Class 2. They're not as good. I mean, obviously they whipped us, but they're not as good as they've been the last 2 years that we've played them. Now they have gotten better. Obviously, I think Judd obviously is a great coach, probably the best coach, one of the best coaches in the state, and he has gotten his guys to play better. They had earlier in the year they kind of got better by losing one of their captains. If that it was just kind of a deal. He was being a captain, but he wasn't. I don't necessarily know if he was being a team guy, and I think he ended up getting off the team, quitting or whatever he did. But I think it ended up making them better because they didn't have that distraction, I guess you'd call it. So, their skill guys are really good. Their receivers are really good. They remind me a lot of some of the guys that we had last year. The Follett kid's playing really good.
Follard's all over the place.
He's playing really good at yeah, there are a lot of Follards. But the one playing quarterback, I think Wyatt, he's playing really well right now. I mean, he's not as good as Kaysen was last year, but he's getting the ball to the guys that need to get the ball. And the Geck kid is one of those kids that's just kind of dynamic. I mean, you got to put 2 on him, or they're going to take their shots with him every time, and he's probably going to win, 80% of those at least. And that when you have somebody like that, and I do know, it makes it a little bit easier because they got to put 2 on him, and if they don't, you're probably going to win those. And when they do put 2 on them, it opens a lot of other stuff up. So,
is Judd, because he was a great quarterback and now a coach, is he is he really good at he's obviously good at everything, right? Yep. He's a CEO. He's good at the but is he really good at the quarterback coaching?
Oh yeah, he's really good at quarterback coaching. He understands everything about the game of football. He reads a lot of books. He reads a lot of he's into that stuff. He's also got good assistants, just like I do. Nathan Geck does a great job with Judd and has for a long time. And I know he's high on the Roth kid that coaches his line. And I know a lot of those other coaches that coach down there that are, he's kind of like me. A lot of those guys played for him, and, they respect him and what he does.
They really play for the, it's a cliche, I know, but at Valley, they really play for the name on the front of the jersey.
They do. They have to because it's all their dads and uncles and obviously cousins. And it's funny because – you take away about 4 families down there, seriously, and I'm not joking, because even the ones that don't have the Follett last name, they're kin to the Follards, it's just funny because I know them all personally. I know all the families and stuff. So when they say these names, I'm like, yeah, but that's a Follett. I mean, really, he's a Follett. His mom was a Follett, or whatever. So, but it's funny because there's 2 Follett families down there, and then I don't know how closely they are related. I'm sure they're related down the line, but they're not like first cousins. You know what I mean? So, but their grandpas are both Bob. So, Grandpa Bob Follett, it's Bob Follard's got all the grandkids on there, but it's 2 different Bob Follards. So, good. Anyway, they're going to be fun to watch. And I don't think it's going to be I know they play Bowling Green, I think, this week, and they've already beat them pretty good.
And then he just said maybe Lamar after that.
Lamar should be the semis, and I don't, looking at Lamar, and I've talked to some guys down there now that I know some of those guys from playing Seneca, and I know Coach Cox down at Mount Vernon pretty well. I got to know him over the years, and, they're in the same conference with Lamar, and they both told me that Lamar's not as good as they've been, and, so I do think that they're probably going to win it. I don't know much about the team, Fairgrove or whoever they might play in a state championship.
You got South Shelby on the other side, but they seem to me maybe because they've seen them, a few times down the road. They don't seem to be quite at that level. This year,
I just think that Valley can throw it well enough. They're kind of like us last year. They can throw it well enough, and then if you give them light boxes because they have to defend all those guys, then they're good enough to run the football. Their running schemes are really good. So, and defensively, Valley's always good. Everybody gives Judd a lot of credit for their offense, but I mean, Judd's really good at offense because he understands defense, and their defense is always, in my opinion, as good as their offense is, their defense is usually better than their offense.
Wow. Okay, so Coach Schweiss says Valley's going to win it. That's at the Class 2 level. The other team, the next team I want to ask you about, is the only team that's beat them this year. St. Vincent. What a team! What a year they've put together. They're undefeated. They're ranked number 1 in Class 1, and golly, they've had some great wins and some really impressive showings.
Yeah, I would think St. Vincent will win Class 1. It's crazy. We ended up playing, I think Fredericktown. I think it was week 3. We played Fredericktown on a Thursday, and that Friday, I actually stayed home. I was going to go watch Borgia play St. Dominic because we were playing St. Dominic the next week, and I decided I was going to stay home. And so I watched it on Misha TV, and then so I watched a little bit of it, and then I was getting updates from different games, and I saw that St. Vincent and Perryville were playing a tight game. So I ended up going and watching a little bit of that game.
Did you really?
Yeah, I watched that game live.
And Perryville was up 19-0.
Perryville should have won that game.
Yeah.
I mean, Perryville was up 19-0, and then
Who also, by the way, has had a really nice year.
yeah, they had a really good year. And St. Vincent come back, and but Perryville was up. I can't remember what the score was, 22-19 or something. And St. Vincent had the ball under 2 minutes to go, at about the 40-yard line going into score. But they had a fourth down, and Perryville stopped them. And Perryville got the ball back, and their guys were like celebrating on the field. They were like doing snow angels because it was raining. They were out there doing snow angels.
They won it, huh?
Yeah, they thought it was over, you know. And St. Vincent still had a couple timeouts left. And Perryville, so Perryville couldn't just take a knee. They could almost take a knee, but if they'd have just taken a knee and punted, St. Vincent probably would have got the ball back with about 20 seconds and had to go 70 or 80 yards. So Perryville decided they had to run some plays, which was probably the right decision, but it was wet, and they ended up fumbling on the first play. Wow. And St. Vincent recovered, and then they scored on their first play. So St. Vincent took the lead, and then Perryville got the ball back and got back to the 11-yard line as time expired, and the quarterback, instead of throwing it away, tried to run with it, and they were out of timeouts, and he didn't get out of bounds.
What a game, though, for that community, right? I mean,
yeah,
everyone from that community.
It was a really good game. It was a really good game, and you know, I actually went down and watched Perryville play Fredericktown because they opened the season on a Thursday, and I thought, well, I'll go down and watch that because Frederick, you know, I need to watch. I used to not go scout Fredericktown, but I thought I better go scout them this year, you know.
Good thing you did.
Yeah, no kidding. Anyway, I watched Perryville play Fredericktown, and I come home and I told Ty, my son, I said, Perryville might not lose a game this year. Like, they're scheduled because they play in that other conference now. Their schedule's not very hard.
It's lighter.
And
but their past teams wouldn't have done.
Well, right. And at that time, I didn't know St. Vincent was going to be as good as they were. Mm-hmm. So I come home and said, Perryville's not going to lose a game this year. And he's like, whatever. And I'm like, no, Fredericktown and Perryville were both pretty good. Like, they were both better. He's like, whatever. And I was like, I'm telling you they're not going to lose a game. Well, then week 2, St. Vincent beat Valley. Or St. Vincent beat St. John week 1, 50-something to nothing. And then they beat Valley week 2. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, okay, maybe Perryville will lose a game because they're probably not going to beat St. Vincent if they're beating Valley. And then they almost did.
Occurs. Okay, so the third team I'm going to ask you about. You didn't play, but you played Farmington, who played Festus. Yeah. So maybe did you watch a little bit of their tape or anything? Yeah. Because they're putting together a tremendous season. They just knocked out Perryville, and I don't know. Class 4 is a different level, right? I mean, you're gonna have to go against. Now you're gonna probably have to beat some Division I athletes if you're gonna win state. But Festus has also put out some Division I athletes recently too, and this might be their best version of them.
Yeah, I'd say, but they're not going to beat Luther North. I wouldn't think.
Right, that's tough.
Yeah, I mean, Luther North is. They beat Ritter. I mean, so that's all you got to say is they beat Ritter, so they must be pretty legit. It's one of those things. And I know because we've had to do it over the years. And I know Festus isn't us, but Festus, is kind of Festus is really good this year. I'm not saying that, but we've had some really good teams too, and we're going to play some of those guys. And you have to play your best game. You have to play absolutely your best game just in order to compete. And then catch some breaks, and that's hard to do. And that sucks for Festus, but at the same time, and that's why I think Valley's going to win this year in Class 2, and they'll probably bump up to Class 3. And now Valley will have a chance in Class 3 now because all the big boys are gone. Yeah.
They've all bumped up.
They've all bumped up. Right. So we realized that last year on our run we didn't have to go through Luther North or Ritter or any of those guys, and I'm not saying Borgia and Blair Oaks and Seneca weren't good football teams because they were, but they weren't Cardinal Ritter.
No, they didn't have dudes with 5, bunches of stars beside them.
That we were watching almost beat South Carolina this week,
right. Or on Sundays.
Yeah,
or
right.
Whatever.
Right. So, but yeah, Festus, it kind of sucks because, they are really good, but, at the end of the day, you're going to come up against Luther North, and I think, I didn't know much about Luther North because I was surprised last year that Hillsboro beat them because I thought Luther North would probably beat Hillsboro last year. Now, I know Hillsboro was really good last year, but Luther North must have gotten a little bit better than last year because, they said, Ritter's as good as Ritter's been.
Yeah, they're supposed to be national, just nationally ranked.
So Luther North beat them. So that just tells me that Festus is probably going to. Is that this week that they play them, or is that next week?
I want to say it's next week.
I can't remember who they play.
I don't know for sure.
I didn't even look at the Class 4 one, but I knew that Festus was really good and had a chance to win their district, which they did. Especially once Perryville upset Hillsboro.
Yep.
And then, but I thought, well, that what district's about is all they're going to get because now I hope I'm wrong. Obviously, I would love Festus to win just because I like to see the little guys beat those teams, but. And Coach Afadale's done a great job up there. He's done a good job since he's been there. So, he's got a lot of connections too. Obviously, he's played in the NFL and coached or played at Mizzou. So, he can probably get some kids. And I talked to Coach Krupe. I think he tried to get some of their better players. So, he probably is not shy on trying to get some guys to play for him. So. I don't know many of those Festus players, but I know they've had a good year. So I'm assuming they're pretty good.
Good talking football with you. Nice to see you.
Yeah, it's always good talking football.
Yeah. Kory Schweiss, Central Head Man, Chad Speaker right here on Knuckleball Prime Time.
Thanks.